And we're back. You're listening to the Talkin' Boxing with Billy C show. Glad you could join us. Don't forget about our website, www.billycboxing.com. And while you're at it, follow us on Twitter, will you? It's at Talkin' Boxing. Let me spell it for you. It's TALKINBOXING. Well, it's that time of the month again. I guess I could have found a different choice of words, but joining us right now with her monthly women's boxing report, the author of The History of Women's Boxing, Malissa Smith. What's up, Melissa?
Hey, how are you? How's it going? I guess you're upstate, right? So you're slammed with lots of snow?
Yeah, and the beauty of it was that I happened to have been in Florida all last week. So yesterday I flew right in the middle of this storm, and it's still going strong up here now. I thought you guys were actually getting it worse, but I've about had it with this winter already, man.
I know, I certainly have. I wish I had followed you to Florida. And this week, it's not too bad. In New York City, we had just a lot of sleet and little bits of snow, and it's supposed to clear out later tonight and then get real cold towards the end of the week. So,
well,
I guess we're still hanging in there.
before we go, and if I don't say it, remind me about something I was working on in Florida that's right up your alley. Okay, so why don't you give us your monthly women's boxing report? What do you got going for us this month?
Well, I got to tell you, it was a very slow start to the year with not a lot going on in boxing. I mean, the biggest thing in women's boxing was probably on the amateur side, where the 2015 USA Boxing Elite National Championships were held from the 19th to the 24th of January in Washington State. Not a lot of big surprises on the female side of the elite card, in the sense that the two of the three Olympians, well, actually all three of our 2012 Olympians were successful and are USA national champions again. And, of course, I'm speaking of Marlon Esparza, who won the bronze medal in the 112-pound weight class. She is repeating her, I think it's her 7th or 8th national title, which is quite an accomplishment for a young woman. And she will also have the honor of representing the United States at the Pan American Games. That honor also brings with it an automatic right to compete in early next year in the Olympic trials in the run-up to the 2016 Olympic Games. Also repeating with her USA Boxing National Championship was Claressa Shields, who, as you know, Billy, won the only gold medal for the United States for boxing in 2012. She is quite an amazing competitor and defeated Raquel Miller in her final bout, and will also be representing the United States at the Pan American Games. Michaela Mayer, who won at the 132-pound, I should say that Claressa Shields is a middleweight, fights at 165, and is one of the three Olympic weights, because at this point women are only allowed to still only allowed to compete in three weight classes. Michaela Mayer, who at 132 pounds took the lightweight title. Queen Underwood had represented the United States at the Olympics, but she chose to compete at 141 pounds this year. Which means she is not competing at an Olympic weight, at least had not for the USA Boxing National Championships. So Michaela Mayer will represent the United States at the U.S. Pan Am Games this summer at 132 pounds. They are all exceptional boxers with really deepening skills and talent, and the more that they compete, the more opportunities they have to represent the United States overseas and often win titles and championships, which is all terrific, again, to the run-up of 2016, which not only will have Olympic trials in the United States, but that team will then represent the U.S. at the international championships, and then from there go on to the Olympics in Brazil. So in that sense, it's been quite an exciting time for U.S. female boxers. On the side of the fence, which is professional, as I said, it's been kind of slow. There have been some bouts in I guess, the fighter known as the Hawaiian Mongoose, Eileen Olszewski, who you may have actually seen. Eileen has fought actually on this coast. She took a 10-round unanimous decision over Cristina Fuentes. Although it was a pretty narrow, close fight. It was 95-94 twice, and another judge had it 96-93. But it's something that she's been wanting to do to defend the title, and she's already a two-time WIBA flyweight champion and a former GBU title holder. So that was pretty exciting for her to be able to come out on top on that bout. Coming up this weekend, at least on the East Coast, we have a small smoker on Friday, which Susan Reno, who's a local fighter, will be fighting Paula Ortiz. Then coming up on the week of the 21st, Amanda Serrano, who is a perennial favorite in the boxing ring, will be fighting in the Dominican Republic in an 8-rounder against Marisol Reyes. That'll be a super featherweight fight. And then on the same weekend, Alexandra Mabzek-Lopez, who recently lost a bout to Michaela Lauren in Sweden for the vacant WBC super welterweight title in November. Alexandra will have a fight, although there's no at this point, it's kind of a TBD on the opponent, which is not great considering it's just 2 weeks away, but so we'll see what happens there. In her fight, though, with Michaela Lauren, it was a very close one, which ended up in a split decision for Michaela Lauren. So it'll be interesting to see who she fights and whether or not she'll have the opportunity to fight a good caliber opponent. I'll add that Michaela Lauren, who won that WBC welterweight title, will be defending it in March or at the end of March against Larissa Rivas in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm not so familiar with Larissa Rivas as a fighter. She doesn't have the greatest record, so we'll see what that's going to shake out to be. Michaela Lauren, I did see in New York in the run-up to her fight. She actually came to Gleason's Gym and did some training. I have to say, even trained with my trainer, Lennox Blackmore, and spent a day with him going over pad drills and some other fine points of infighting. And so, as I said, we'll see what that brings and whether or not her new opponent will offer her any kind of competition. And that's really about it. There's just not a lot that's happening at the moment, not a lot of fights. We're expecting that we'll hear of some upcoming matches pretty soon. Noemi Vasquez, who will be having a fight. I haven't exactly heard the date on that yet. That should be soon. And I guess and Anna Houlihan, who had been had boxed, had actually had a pretty good run, had won some championships, was really starting to spark a lot of interest on a sort of more national scale, and there had even been talk about putting her on the air on one of the networks. Had actually gone into MMA, and now she's talked about coming back over onto the boxing side, so that remains to be seen whether that will actually happen. And Holly Holm, who was a very big boxing, probably one of the biggest winners in female boxing, recently went over to MMA and has recently joined the UFC. She had been delayed by an injury, but it seems as if she's going to actually have her debut UFC match sometime later this month, and is potentially someone they'll groom for actual pay-per-view.
Yeah, it's been slow for all the boxing, not just women's, but and just to follow something with Naomi Boscu, I was basically in her area last week, and there's a lot of talk about that upcoming fight that she may, because she's similar to a New York fighter that we both know, Heather Hardy, where they're successful, they have big fan bases. They have some type of title that they're walking around with, but you and I have both Agreed that, they still need time. Let's just be nice and say they still need time to hone their skills, in my opinion, and I think you share that opinion. Rumor has it in and around the Tampa, Sarasota, Florida area that Naomi might be in above her head in her next fight. She's fighting a girl that can fight. And that's something that I'm going to be interested in myself, seeing how she fares, because she's been known to kind of slack a little bit in training, and she's into all the attention, and she's gotten a couple of gift decisions, and she might be in for a surprise when she fights in a couple of weeks. So keep your eye on that one. I have two things I wanted to mention to you. One, we may be broadcasting the fights, the Olympic trials in Atlanta coming up for the female boxing. So I'll keep you posted on that. Are you going to be attending those?
That's in the end of April, right?
Yes.
April 22nd. I actually I was just talking with Terry Moss and about that. And in fact, we actually have a call set for later tonight to talk about that and to see whether I can get down there.
Yeah.
Should be very, very exciting.
I work with Terry, and that's something that we're hoping we can get done. So hopefully I'll see you again down there. But here's what
that would be cool.
Here's what I want to ask you about. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, I was going to say that I remembered who she's fighting. Noemi Bosque is fighting Nidia Feliciano, who is a good fighter.
Of course she is. And didn't she fight?
She's a very good fighter.
Now didn't Feliciano fight Amanda Serrano at one time?
I think she may have. I mean, she's a tough girl and very, very savvy and very skilled.
Yeah. Naomi's in for some trouble. And I think she is. But anyway, let me ask you your opinion on something. It was brought to my attention during a series of meetings I was in last week. And one of the ideas that are actually being tossed around is a female boxing tournament that would cover a couple of weight classes, that it would take about a year to complete. There would be an event every month. Do you think it would be successful? That's the big question. I have my doubts only because not for the excitement, but just the thing that haunts women's boxing, that lack of commitment from promoters and interest from the fans, from the bulk of the fans, not the diehard female boxing fans, because they would love this, especially worldwide. But what's your thoughts on something like that if we were able to put it together? Well,
one of the things that, in fact, tonight, Friday Night Fights is starting with the Boxino, and that was enormously successful, and where they had a group of middleweight fighters that fought in a tournament style, and one of them came out the winner.
Right. They started again Friday night
it's starting Friday night, and with the junior middleweight.
And then next week it's the heavyweights, which I'll be ringside for.
Oh, that's brilliant. So to me, it's an opportunity to get away from the usual promoters crap, where where on the one hand they're trying to bring up some kid who who's a prospect, so they're giving him opportunities to fight people that are better left outside the ring, and it's an opportunity for truly competitive fights, for boxers to have an opportunity to test their skills, and for the audience to really have a treat, if you will, of a real boxing match. So I think that having that kind of a tournament, where basically you have the best women in a different weight class being able to compete against each other in an environment where they're not worrying about putting fannies in the seats and selling their tickets and the $2,000 they're going to earn, but have a real tournament environment, would certainly be brilliant for the boxers, and I think attract fans that never really knew about the sport, because they will be seeing the best of the best in that kind of an environment. And if it's paired with something like a male tournament, and the pure promotional aspects of it are kind of kept at bay somewhat, I think it offers an opportunity to showcase great fighting and great fighters. And if there's some opportunity to work in something with AIBA where there's sort of an amateur professional kind of mix, where you have the opportunity to bring in some of these sensational amateur fighters who, if nothing else, can give exhibitions at different weight classes or have some kind of pro-AMI tournament at the same time. There's a real opportunity to showcase women's boxing at its best, especially in the run-up to the Olympics. So that would be my vote. Yeah,
and the thing that we're looking at is that it appeals to a worldwide audience, which would pick up some of the slack, because here in the United States, it doesn't have the same support it has in other countries, So that's what the whole idea when they brought it up. That's what they were looking at. And it could be good or it could be a flop. Anytime you've ever, what did they call that? Ring of Fire, or what was the that tournament? It wasn't a tournament, but it was all female. A couple of cards out of DC. What did they call that? Was it? I
frankly I can't recall it. But and there have been situations of all female cards. I mean, we're going back 25 years. There were female cards that were successful. What you're talking about, though, is a little bit different, because you're talking about a tournament situation where you have a series of fighters, whether it's 8 fighters or 6 fighters, who fight in a series of fights and then meet each other again and again until you have a winner. So it creates a different kind of momentum than just a straight card that says, hey, I've got 6 female bouts on a card. But if you're talking about, let's say, doing a tournament with welterweight fighters and lightweight fighters, or middleweight fighters and lightweight fighters, or some combination, and having them repeat so that the fans can get to know these boxers, and follow them, and be excited by the chance that they'll win and progress in that tournament, I think it offers a lot of opportunities to market it in a very positive way. And again, if you're pairing it with a tournament style with male boxing as well, you kind of have the fans there already, so it gives even more opportunity for showcasing. So yeah. I would support it highly, and would think that especially if they're able to bring in fighters from Mexico, fighters from Argentina, fighters from Europe, fighters from Japan and Korea, it just would potentially add to the excitement.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If you were able to assemble a field of the upper echelon talented female fighters, from a weight class or two, and they all agreed to enter this tournament knowing that they could fight any other person, based on the outcomes of the fights leading up to the next fight, I think that it could go well. We're working on it, so keep that in the back of your mind.
I think that's great, and I'm excited by the prospect that it's being talked about at all. Is a very exciting prospect. And look, the fighters at that level are truly talented and gifted as boxers, and the opportunity to showcase those skills and to showcase the special, the slightly different way that women end up fighting because it's 2-minute round versus a 3-minute round, which gives fans a different look and a different sense of what boxing can be all about, because it's not, when you only have 2 minutes, it's a very explosive fight and therefore a very exciting fight in a way that a 3-minute round can't necessarily happen all the time. I wanted to jump back to Nidio Feliciano, who will be having that fight with Noemi. She's just come off of 2 losses, one with Shelley Vincent and one with Heather Hardy. And so it'll be interesting, and both of which were close fights. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Yeah,
it's going to be, and hopefully, and a lot of people felt she got robbed in that fight with Heather Hardy. It'll be interesting to see, and you and I have talked. It seems like those 2 fighters, Heather Hardy and Naomi Boscu, are kind of parallel fighters. I would love to see them meet each other at some point, but anyway, just so you know, that whole tournament thing wasn't the reason I went there. It was brought up while I was there, and it took on a life of its own. So there is some interest there, and I will definitely keep you posted on that. And I think that this hopefully, if we get to do this project with Terry, that might, who knows what that could lead into, and you know.
Well, yeah, and you know, and again, to work the AIBA angle, there have been on the elite men's side been amateur professional tournaments, and it's something that had been discussed for female fighters. It never really came to pass. There was a lot of controversy about it, especially from some of the European fighters who felt sucker punched, if you will, by the fact that it didn't come to pass. But you know, if there's more interest generated, and with the success of 2012, and with what one assumes will be the success of the female performances in Brazil in 2016, there might be a real momentum for this kind of an offing, because many of these amateur women find that they stay amateur, especially the American women, because they can at least earn a living. I mean, someone like Christina Cruz, who's just a phenomenal fighter, who again, you know, got a USA national boxing title at the 119-pound weight. I mean, she stays in it because she gets to see the world, she gets to box. She's an 8-time Golden Gloves winner. She's going for her 9th this year in New York City. But the fact of the matter is, if she were to turn pro tomorrow, she'd be dead broke, because at least as an elite athlete in an amateur program, she gets training is paid for, travel is paid for, and she can, you know, at least practice the sport that she loves in an environment that respects her as an athlete. So at this point, you know, the women who have come up through the amateur ranks are really asking themselves, is it worth it at this point in the United States to jump onto the professional side, because it is so difficult. But if there was an opportunity for an amateur professional type of tournament, it might make it particularly interesting for the fans to see this incredible core of very, very talented fighters.
Yeah, and I agree. I hope it continues on the upswing, that's for sure. But anyway, hey, listen, guess what? Next month we're going to have to do the same thing. We'll be doing the second Monday instead of the first, because I'll be in France. And so, yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, not really for any women's boxing, but I'll be there for some fights. So it turns out that it falls once again on your day. So mark that one down, and we'll look forward to you then. All right.
Terrific. Thank you so much.
All right, Melissa. Take care. That's
okay, bye-bye.
That's Malissa Smith. Make sure you get a copy of her book, The History of Women's Boxing. Now, you can get it. It's pretty much anywhere, but real easy link is up on our website, www.billycboxing.com. And in our book club, you can't miss it. It's right in there. Just click it and make sure you buy yourself a copy. Malissa Smith did a great job with that book. Actually, when I met Melissa, I got to check out that book, and she got me a copy, and I think everyone who collects boxing books or just wants to learn about women's boxing and specifically the history of it. And, you know, I've mentioned it before, and Melissa was able to even point out deeper roots in the history of when it started. It's a lot longer than Christy Martin. Trust me. Get yourself a copy of the book. Like I said, it's up on www.billycboxing.com in the book club. But anyway.